Okay, kids, here we go.
You're listening to Late Night Radio on the SHR Media Network. Caution, there will be mature themes explored and potentially adult language used. If conservatarian words, phrases, certain concepts, or rhetoric offends you, tune out now.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, where I am broadcasting from Nome, Idaho, in an actual free state. I am this guy. I am your Conservative Sherpa, making sure that I guide you through the maelstrom of Demorat, Leftist, and Globalist lies and chaos and bedlam and betrayal and deceit and traitorousness, ishness-shun. And I'm BZ. Please remember, if you would, that what you're going to hear tonight consists, well, basically for the next 2 hours, if I can last, if my guest can last, consists of my opinion and my opinion only, and also my guest's opinion and his opinion only. I am doing the job. The American media maggots won't. I am fundamentally changing America one leftist diaper at a time. And I say this, we don't water our drinks. Just like we don't water our conversation, we're still serving stiff drinks right here in the saloon, along with facts, history, logic, proportion, clarity, context, tradition, and common sense for normal people like you and me. And politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all right here in the saloon, where the speech is free, but the booze is not. I am live streaming right now on a bunch of different places that look like this. You can hear me on Apple Podcasts, Facebook, KLRN Radio, Twitch, on Rumble, on X, and also the SHR Media YouTube channel, which, if you prefer the portrait mode, that's how you can see me if you're watching right now. And also, if you want to jump into what I would consider to be my sumptuous, palatial, and resplendent chat room, go to SHR Media, the SHR Media YouTube channel, and you can chat right there all day long. Well, only as long as the show is on, for God's sake. In any event, I have a gentleman on tonight that I have not had on since, I would guess, probably 2019, right around in there, 2019, 2020, and I used to have him on all the time. The dude is super. It's Dr. Jones, I presume, who is a constitutional scholar. And because of the nature of the show, what I was going to do is this story. And I plan to do it, by the way, today's is Tuesday. Okay, so just remember that. It is June the 30th, the year of our Lord, 2026. It's Tuesday. And my last show was Sunday. And I intended to do this on Sunday's show. It was a story about a place called Miranda's Rescue. And Miranda's Rescue is in the Northern California area. And it turns out that roughly 600 dogs are missing. And it's not that they're missing per se. It's that most of them have been found shot in the head. And so the local sheriff's department and the FBI is in on that. And even now, I'm starting to get steamed. I won't be able to cover this story tonight. I couldn't cover it Sunday night because, being the owner of a dog that just recently passed away, Jake, this hit really close to home. And I'm not going to talk about it tonight because I have another fabulous guest, but I'm going to get to this. And it's taken me this long to calm down from that. So let's just stop dinking around. I have a gentleman on who I haven't had in quite some time. This is Professor Michael Jones and Dr. Jones, I presume. Hey, if you would give folks a little bit of background about you, because you were the underground professor. You had your own podcast for years. You're a constitutional scholar. You taught con law, essentially. And so when there were issues back then on SHR, I would call you up, you'd come on and do your level best to explain them to the blubbering baboon sitting right here. So if you would, for the people, I'd say it's probably 99.9% of the audience now have no idea who you are. But if you would, Michael Jones, please explain to people who you are, your education, that kind of stuff. In other words, how come, why for do I come to you when I want to find out what's going on with constitutional stuff?
That's usually because I'm right.
That's okay. That's the best place to start, folks. I found my old bell, so it'll be going like this tonight. It's louder than the older one, no, than the newer one. So first bell of the night.
I prefer Herr Professor. Bitte. Yeah. If we're gonna live in a social democratic country, we might as well get the titles right.
That's
it
true.
Might spare me from having my books burned or something. Okay. Seriously, I have studied a lot. I have enough hours for 3 PhDs, although I didn't bother to do the dissertation on most of them. But I was qualified and was a professor of government for U.S. and Texas government, and I was co-qualified for U.S. and Texas history. So I taught both history and government. And I became interested in history when I learned that's how you learn about government, because they don't teach anything about politics and political science degrees, which I maintain. So I broke off and started getting a history degree. And then I really had some eye-opening things about what happened in this country and why we're not taught it. The key for me is I did teach constitutional law, con law, but I was told I taught it wrong, and it cost me a few jobs in the market because they couldn't keep me on their educational rolls with such outlandish ideas.
Heretic, disbeliever.
Right. Now, what were those outlandish ideas? Well, they were actually reading the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Northwest Ordinance, etc., and then reading the notes on, say, the constitutional debate, and then going even further and reading articles that the framers and the founders wrote in the papers about the impending Constitution. Mind you, we were already under several presidents. There were something like 9 of them under the Confederation. And I'm not talking about the Civil War here. I'm talking about our first legal government in America with the constitutional authority. So anyway, I taught it that way, but everybody else pretty much, and there may be the odd guy out there, but most everybody teaches it from scardices, which is Supreme Court decisions. Right or wrong, they say, hey, we got to go this way. This is what the Constitution means because it was said this way. Like today, there were a whole bunch of releases from the constitutional, from the civil court. Out here, I'm messing up, from the Supreme Court. And one of them, they got supremely wrong, and that was the interpretation of blood right citizenship, birthright citizenship. And I say blood right because it was coming down from I don't care if they're hateful. They can be hateful to me. I don't care. I just realize that every hateful comment I see just means there's one fewer person that I can help become legitimate. in this world. So
What
you
what I
illustrate
wanted
bastards. Yeah.
what I wanted to do tonight, Michael Jones,
Sure.
is talk about three things in particular, because oh my God, the first one is I couldn't not help but learn things from you, and one of the things that we spoke about, because we talked for about a half hour, 45 minutes before the show, is I can distinctly remember in prior shows you said, one of the reasons that we're getting the decisions that we're seeing today is because the history of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights is not taught. And you mentioned that, stare decisis, and the background of the Constitution, its historical nature is critical. And so, why do you think, Michael Jones, that professors are no longer teaching the history behind the Constitution and the Bill of Rights?
Well, you can blame McCarthy as a senator when the witch hunts, and I quote unquote, even though he was right, there was a big red witch hunt in this country, and there was a change in professorship ideology. Now, it used to be very right wing, stolid. We don't change anything. This is how we do it. This is the way we did it, and that's what we're going to do. But then all these refreshing new youngsters came in, and they flipped the script, and then worse, they only hired people with like mind. And so, like once I was found out, I was kicked out. So if you weren't of like mind, teaching like-minded ideas, then you didn't belong in academia, which was supposed to be preserved for academic elites to think and teach and not be afraid of losing their job. That's where tenure and all that crap comes in, right? But it's all meaningless if you don't toe the line. It's like being in Hollywood. There's a few that are bold enough to admit that they're not crazy leftists, but very few, and they have hard times getting jobs and stuff, and they're abused by the media. But anyway, yeah, so that's one of the reasons. And then, and it's very important. See, words define us. The words we choose to use define us. Like the word democracy. We're not a democracy, but we like to call ourselves one because it makes us feel good about ourselves, that we can be superior to the world because we let everybody vote, even though the majority of the country doesn't bother. But now, let's look at the Second Amendment. Spit it out. I know you know this from memory. Spit out the Second Amendment.
Oh, God.
Congress shall pass no law in regarding the. Go on. Because I can't remember it either.
Okay. Anyway, it's very
Congress
short
can't
and it's
pass
very
laws.
succinct.
Right. And then it says that a militia is necessary, right, for the freedom of freedom. Okay, so we always are hearing all these arguments about the Second Amendment. All right, I wonder how many people that are in your audience are from New York and know the fact that New York almost seceded from the Union far before the Civil War. But after the Constitution was passed, they almost seceded from the Union because the Second Amendment had not been passed. That wasn't to take guns away from people. It was to make sure they have them. Now look at New York and Chicago and these other places. How did they get around to doing it? Because they changed the vocabulary and they use modern definitions. Like gay in my day was happy. Now
Yes.
it's I got to wave a pride flag to be able to say the word. So it's they change the language, then they get you to accept it. And if you're not, I don't want to say too dumb to know, but if you're, I'll use the word ignorant, like I say to my students.
Yeah.
Okay, ignorant doesn't mean you're stupid; it means you're uninformed, right? Now, to be ignorant and remain so is dumb, and that's the crux that we're at. There are so many things out there to learn about this country, and especially the Constitution. And if you read the framework around the Constitution and what the framers and founders all said about it, there'd be no doubt in your mind about the first 11 amendments. Well, 10, because only 10 were passed. One was not passed. And so we go on beyond that. But even more important, I bet you there's not a single person in your audience outside of you, and maybe someone who's happened to have heard me before back when I was still relevant, that what type of government we have. Okay, we are not we are not a constitution. We are not a republic, and we are not a democracy. For God's sakes! In fact, there are three words to describe our government. You need all three, and if you take three, are you waving at me?
No, I'm saying, I know.
Oh, yeah, I already gave you credit. But if you take away any of the three words, then you take away what type of government we are. There is very little in politics that you can say that about three words. We are a constitutionally federated republic, right? Constitutionally, because we have a constitution of words that we all agreed to, and we passed it down in perpetuity to our children. That's key. If you don't like it, you can move to Mexico or to Russia or wherever you think it's great. But if you vote here, if you live here, if you pay taxes here, if you work here, then you have accepted the Constitution. All right, so we know what the Constitution is. That's a relatively easy one. All right, federated. That's the next big one. I am dismayed when I taught my history and my government classes that no one seemed to really know what federated was, other than claiming that the feds, federated, were like the FBI and everybody up in Washington, or the federal government. Okay, that's not what it means. And the federated government, federal government, is just an easy way to say the centralized government, which is a better way of calling them, not federal, but centralized. And they're centralized in Washington, D.C., and a swampland, which they've never cleaned, by the way. Now I hear there's even more swamp in the river up there that Trump is going to have to clean up. But anyway, federated, it's what it means this. There is the central government on this side, and think of law scales, right? I don't know if you can see my hands. Okay, think of law scales. Central government is over here. And on this side were the 13 states that were approved for the Constitution, right? And then it kept growing. So now, I think we're up to 57. Isn't that what Obama said?
Yeah, 57
right.
or 58, according
right.
to
So
Obama.
somewhere around there,
right.
All these states have to agree to the Constitution of the land. And they are co-equal to the central government. You can't escape that fact. If you don't understand that, then just give up and just select D or R or whatever is your routine, and have no understanding of why you're doing this. There was a lot of debate, especially by people like Thomas Jefferson, about nullification. I'm a big fan of it. And you've seen it sometimes when Texas, wags its big ugly tail, and the rest of the country complies because we say no mas. We're not doing this crap anymore. We're not doing this. We're not letting you prevent us from protecting our border, et cetera. And so we nullify what's coming out of Washington. Now, the idea was if a majority of states came together and said no to something the central government decided on, even if it was, well, not a constitutional amendment, of course, but anything less than that, then it was nullified. It's not a law. It's not enforceable. But it's not done enough because too many people are afraid to lead. As I told you, we're not in the wild, wild west here in Texas anymore. We're in the timid west. And it's sad that we don't have leaders. And I just found out that the reason the Alamo failed was because we didn't have enough minorities hired at that war. And so we lost the Alamo. But I'm thinking today, Travis knew he was going to die, and he takes his sword out and draws a line in the sand. And some of this is hyperbole, some of it is apocryphal. But do we have anybody today that would do that? I project maybe Trump and maybe Paxton from Texas. But I don't know anybody else that I think would stand up and protect us from that. And moving on to the Republic. Okay, this is a good thing. We are the sovereigns of this country. all of us that are adults, of course, and legally here, the sovereigns. Okay, so what do we have? We have a republic, which means we stay home and live our busy little lives, and we send people to represent us and to the government. Now, we used to have a decent rule where the Senate was elected by the state legislature, and for Texas would send two to the Senate, and every state that was in the country would have two senators that the legislature would pick, the state legislature, and send them to represent the state. Now they're supernumerary representatives, and they're not beholden to the legislature, so they do whatever they want. And unfortunately, they got a great amount of power that's been bequeathed them. And all of this is because we don't know, and we don't pay attention, and we don't enforce. But that is a constitutionally federated republic. We are not doing anything more than voting for representatives to represent us. And they make a commitment to represent us equally and legally. And I would dare say, if you put your finger on any spot in the Constitution today, past, say, the 10th Amendment, I'd say you're going to be hard-pressed to find me something that's legal that they do. In fact, one of the last remaining legal things this country does constitutionally is they provide for the United States Postal Service, which is in the Constitution, and it directed Franklin to create it. And it's the only thing still that they should be spending money on and stuff, and maybe roads. But the roads were a con. They were to get us to be able to move military around this country, not go vacationing. And so that was abused too. Anyway,
that was the reason for the interstates.
Yeah,
that's correct. That's why the interstates were created, for military purposes and the moving of men, personnel, equipment, etc. So that's very true. Now, Dr. Michael Jones, now riddle me this. Okay, we know that our nation is a constitutionally federated republic. You just delineated what a republic is, but people say, oh, no, it's a democracy. Well, if you would, Michael Jones, explain what is a democracy and why we aren't a democracy.
It's actually simple. First, the framers of the Constitution and the founders of this country, which are not all the same people, would blow a gasket if they heard us calling ourselves a democracy, because a democracy means everybody votes on everything. It is considered not crazy or wow, what's the word I'm thinking? Mob rule. That's how they think of democracy. And to be a true democracy, when the Senate needs more paper clips, you and I have to go to the polls and vote on whether they can have more paper clips or not. There are certain laws that have been put in there, by the way, where the Senate and the House have a unanimous vote for these things. So they don't even have to get on the record. It's just considered unanimous, and it's done, and they get the money for paperweights and whatever they want and need. But a democracy would mean that everybody would have to vote. And that would mean no one's rights are served. And also, the worst thing aspect about it is minority rights would not exist if we were a democracy, because all it would take is 50 plus 1 to say, no, we're going to do it this way. And 49% of the people are now, well, they're not actually disenfranchised, but we use that word wrong too. But they are basically unable to affect legislation, and it won't help them. So democracy is the worst thing that could ever happen to minorities or women or any of these things, except maybe I'm wrong about women, since women comprise 52% of the country. So if they could vote en masse, they could take over everything. So they can quit bitching about it being a man's world, because if they just come together and vote in our democracy, they could end that. But anyway.
And then on top of that, well, yes. So we've indicated what a constitutionally federated republic is. We've talked about a democracy. The other two things that I want to make sure that I hit tonight before the end of the show is we will get to, folks, I swear to God, we will get to birthright citizenship. And as Professor Jones has said before, He has a lot to talk about with regard to birthright citizenship. Also, another individual named Chris Ann Hall. I looked at some of her stuff with regard to birthright citizenship, and there are a lot of points to make about that tonight. The other thing that I'd like to address, and maybe we can start it now before the break, I got about 3 or 4 minutes before the bottom of the hour break, is I wanted to talk about, I've spoken to a gentleman on KLRN before by the name of Stephen Hall, and his opinion with regard to district courts is they're getting away with a lot of things because they can. And one of the things that I had asked him, he's also a constitutional scholar, is, well, why doesn't someone just say, with these opinions that are being issued, why don't we just ignore them? And then that got very convoluted. But as a U.S. Marshal, one of the first things I realized is that there are 94 district courts. Now, there are district appellate courts. There are only 3 of them. But it appears these days that a singular district court, not an appellate court, but a district court, can issue an opinion from 94 different courts, a rather small segment of the United States, and insist that it holds for the rest of the nation. To which I've said for quite some time, that's just on its face wrong. Even if you don't have a constitution, a small segment of a court's district insisting that the nation abide by it is essentially on its face really stupid. Now, maybe that was the entirely wrong way of saying it. But what I'd like you to start, until we got to take a break in about 2 minutes, is how do these district courts push all this stuff? Why have they done it? And legally, can they do it? Professor Michael Jones.
First, I think, aren't there more than 3 appellate courts? Aren't there like 13 or something?
Oh, yeah, there are 13. Yeah. There are 13 appellate courts, and there are 94 district courts.
Right. Okay. Well, the easiest answer is because we don't know better. We don't know what our government is. We don't know what it is. We don't know how it's supposed to function. And, and then we allow it to happen to us because we don't fight it. I don't mention nullification. It doesn't have to get messy. It's very easy to nullify, but it's very painful politically for our political leaders. Did I lose you?
Nope.
Oh,
right.
My picture went tiny. These district courts are in, now this something, get ready for your bell. They're in districts.
Yes.
They're not constitutional courts. They are not the Supreme Court, which is the only court in the country that can hear and decide everything, especially disputes between the states or with foreign governments. The district court can only rule and affect their district. But they say something, and the next thing you know, the media is promoting that abortion is legal or something because district, 92 said so. Well, you know what? There were 93 other districts who didn't, and none of those are applicable. Plus, you can't go into, say, appellate circuit 5 for something happening up in New York. Right? You got to go California or 9 or whatever it is for us, the circus court, I call it. But
yes.
So you got to go to the appellate court that affects those districts. And any district outside of the appellate court, it doesn't matter. But you'll still hear rulings. Well, they'll say, well, this will only apply to, Frenchmen in Tennessee, or they'll say that it applies to the nation. Neither are true. It applies to the district that brought the appeal to the appellate court. And that's it. Doesn't apply to all the districts in the appellate court. It only applies to that. However, the other districts in that appellate court know that if they bring this up, the same appellate court is likely to rule the same unless they have some kind of new evidence or something that they can significantly change the court's opinion. But on a prima facie basis, these courts do not have the power that we have given them.
Okay. Folks, that's Professor Michael Jones right there. And I'm BZ. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back after this. If you would be so kind as to return, come right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Mission log entry. I mean, let's face it, who's even counting anymore? The Lost Wanderer is officially off course, chasing rogue rocket launches, fringe science, and things that probably violate causality. If it burns fuel, bends time, or makes scientists very uncomfortable, yeah, I'm probably going to talk about it. Every other Sunday on KLRN Radio, The Lost Wanderer, because space doesn't come with a roadmap, and honestly, I wouldn't follow if it did.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Hey fellas, are you mission ready? You need to check out Mission Ready Men via Earl Big E Jackson on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Central, and noon Eastern. It's a show that equips you to navigate our society's challenges from a biblical perspective with courage and conviction. Tune into Mission Ready Men as we examine our culture through the prism of biblical truths, teachings, and how to apply them in our daily lives. Prepare to step up, stand out, and step into your role as a man as ordained by God. That's Mission Ready Men, hosted by Earl Jackson on the SHR Media Network. And get mission ready.
Want to make an immediate difference in the life of a critically ill child? You have the ability to do that right now. Make a donation to Dream Makers for Life, the organization that restores dreams to seriously ill children and their families. You can sponsor a dream pack for a child, which contains a clear PVC backpack, a dry erase board adventure coloring book, a journal, and dry erase markers to inspire a critically ill child to envision a future adventure and hope. Want to become a dream maker for life yourself? Go to dreamforlife.org. That's dreamforlife.org. Help a child. Help a family. There is always hope.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
It's the first half hour down, kids, and thanks for being here tonight. Thanks for listening, watching live, watching later in podcast. Always appreciated. Right now, my understanding is that we've got about, let's see, what did I say? 1,650 plus subscribers to the SHR Media Network. And thanks to everybody who has subscribed. And if you wish to subscribe, I would highly recommend it also. If you're thinking about doing that, please, on the SHR Media YouTube channel, hit the bell, and then you theoretically, according to YouTube, you'll get notified about the shows. Tonight, I have the wonderful Dr. Jones. I presume it's Professor Michael Jones, you underground professor emeritus, who had a show himself on for a number of years called The Underground Professor, a constitutional scholar. And we were talking about, well, first I wanted to make sure that we talked about what is the United States. It's not a democracy. It's a constitutionally federated republic. And what's a democracy? Well, if you missed what's a democracy, go back to the first half hour. The other thing that I wanted to hit on, two other things, was, hey, these federal district courts, what the heck is up with them? How is it that one of 94 district courts get to make and ship out an opinion that they believe is applicable to the entire nation when it's only coming out of one district court? There are 94 of those. There are 13 courts, district courts of appeal. Now, those are two separate things, two separate entities. And so we'll be continuing to talk about that, because I made a little bit of an amazing discovery during the break. And then
you found your zipper.
Oh, that too. And I also found another very interesting article. And then finally, we'll wrap up tonight with Birthright citizenship, the opinion that just came out today, where people are saying either yay or that's stupid, or it's not necessarily quite that simple. Or is it? Well, that's why we have a constitutional scholar with us tonight who will weigh in on that kind of thing. Now, unfortunately, I didn't put on the other side, which I could display to everybody right now, but I'm looking at an article from Ogletree Deacons, a law firm, I believe, and it says that the title of it's from June 27th, 2025. And it says, Supreme Court rules federal district courts likely lack authority for universal injunctions. Well, hey, BC, that seems kind of what I'm trying to angle on tonight. Doesn't it seem like that? Sure it does. But already, Professor Michael Jones has hit on the very single, incredibly important word on that. Let me start the first paragraph of the article. It says, on June 27th, 2025, the Supreme Court of the United States held that federal district courts likely lack the authority to issue universal injunctions blocking presidential actions nationwide. That's what I was talking about during the first half hour. A ruling, the article says, that is likely to allow the Trump administration to continue enforcing executive orders, EOs, or other policies despite legal challenges to their constitutionality. So, to Professor Michael Jones, constitutional scholar, right here in front of our faces, to which we should take advantage of his knowledge, is Supreme Court rules federal district courts likely lack authority for universal injunction. So how is it that the Supreme Court could not manage to come out and say definitively, well, they're equivocating, maybe, yeah, pretty much, sort of, but how do they come up with likely in that?
Well, I got an easy answer for you. First off, timid. Second, it's a little different with the Supreme Court because there's 9 of them. And if they get a ruling out, sometimes they have to incorporate minority language. And so I'm betting, one of the left judges who do not quite, they know how the Constitution works. Let's just put that out there. They refuse to apply the Constitution unless it fits their neat little political agenda. And God help me if the other side does that, because I will hold them just as accountable. But so they put in there, well, let's say likely, because this hasn't been vetted enough. And there's a justification for that word. Likely means it's going to come up again, and then it will be vetted more, and then we'll understand it better. And then they'll be able to come down with a definitive ruling. But if I was on the Supreme Court, I would have just simply said, it's not likely. Why do you think they're in districts? This is a funnel up system to the Supreme Court. And the Constitution says that the Congress can make all the courts it feels necessary, but it will have the Supreme Court. And someone just said it's media is irrelevant. You're right. This is about the justices and how they communicate with each other. And you never know. It's a crapshoot when you go to the Supreme Court, how they're going to rule, because you don't know what wheeling and dealing they have to do. And And, you know, and then you always got these things like Alito came out against the Birthright, and then immediately some Vanity Fair or something announced that he was retiring, and that caused a big old hullabaloo, right? Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So the media does affect these things, and they try very hard to. Although the Supreme Court was designed not to be affected by anything. This is why they sit at State of the Unions abreast across from each other, and they don't say anything, and their faces are neutral. It's supposed to be that way anyway. It's to show independence of government and that they are part of a trilogy of government. You have the legislature, you have the executive, and you have the judicial. And they are an even third. And it took a lot of rulings to get them to where they even were taken seriously in the beginning of this country.
It's funny you should mention that article, because here it is right there, kids. It's from NPR. NPR retracts Justice Samuel Alito's story. Earlier today, we erroneously published a story saying Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito was retiring. A retraction. Neither Alito nor the court's public information office has announced his retirement, and we have retracted the story. And that caused a kerfuffle of monumental proportions. Well, let me go back to the original article here that I was looking at. And it was saying that with regard to the Supreme Court rules, federal district courts likely lack authority for universal injunctions. What they said was it was a 6-3 decision, Trump versus CASA Incorporated. The Supreme Court found the Trump administration was likely to prove that the U.S. Congress did not provide district courts with equitable authority to issue universal injunctions in the Judiciary Act of 1789. And so these injunctions, the court said, likely exceed the equitable authority that Congress has granted to federal courts. And so once again, I have to weigh in and say, then it falls into, I guess, for lack of a better word, sort of a BZ if-then equation. If this is true, then why is anyone listening to a district court and allowing them to assume or usurp power not guaranteed to them? Professor Michael Jones.
Well, if I could quote Sugar Ray, they'd be idiots. No, it's because they don't know. They're simple. Why they have been taught their whole lives and passed it down to their kids that these district courts are infallible. They're like little popes in America. And I'll go another step. I think ever since Obama, executive orders have been weaponized, and they should be few and far between. And so I'm no happier about Trump coming out with one after another executive order either. I think he's exceeding the constitutional limitations on the executive branch. But this is the way politics is done these days. And so, you know, it's not unexpected for Trump to do this with an executive order, and then his people that are against him, the left, to come out with a district ruling to fight him. And of course, they have to find a district court with a left-leaning judge that will agree to this, because if they go to say, you know, it's not always the rule, but if they go to say a Republican-appointed district judge, and I'm from Texas, so everything's elected here, but I know that other places you get appointed, that they may or may not rule with you against Trump. And that's sadly not because of the constitutional issues, but the political issues. So it's on both sides. And because it's on both sides, we have learned to accept it en masse as, you know, as something. And it's really, to me, the power of the circuit courts are apocryphal. But sadly, not too many people even know what that word means, let alone what the courts are doing to them. And they're disembodied. There's somebody somewhere away that must be smart, and you know, they wear black robes and they're on high and they can take you and throw you in prison like that. So of course we don't want to upset the apple cart.
Are we waiting then, Professor Michael Jones, are we waiting for someone somewhere to eventually weigh in or make a public statement similar to, that new opinion? No, we're not doing that. We're not complying.
Yeah.
Somebody somewhere has got to draw that line. I go back to what I've said before. I call that Thug's Law. And I learned that in Coptum. Thug's Law is this: what's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine, unless you're powerful enough or strong enough or insistent enough, or you have the will to stop me. And
that sounds like divorce.
That's street law or divorce law. That's street law, but it also seems to apply to our legal system at this point, coupled with the fact that, like you said, I just get the feeling these days, Michael Jones, that SCOTUS is just not interested in making clear and distinct rulings on, to use your word, apocryphal issues, big issues. I mean, we got in October, the second session starts of SCOTUS, and they're going to actually hear from 2 states, if I'm not mistaken, about what people call assault rifles, which are nothing more than rifles with scary things attached to them, but they're going to rule on that.
Big decision today on that, if you didn't hear.
It's coming in October, but did I miss something else about that?
Oh, yeah. They ruled today. They granted certiorari, which is, it means like amicus curiae. It gave amicus curiae respondents the right to petition the Supreme Court. So they basically said, you are justified to bring a lawsuit. And so all these people like Texas Gun Association, a Rifle Association, NAGR, Texas one, national one, the NRA, they've all added these amicus curiae briefs, and they were blocked until today. So this is a virtual death sentence to an assault weapon ban. But mind you, for you guys out there listening, go look up what an M2 is, and then compare it to an AR-15, and then tell me why an M2 I can hold in my little hands and own without any regulations, but I can't have an AR-15.
Well, the other thing that nobody seems to realize, because the firearms world is fungible and it changes and it responds. I have to do this, folks. Air quotes. Assault rifles are evil, and it's a military round. Excuse me. 5.56/223 is no longer a military round.
It's NATO.
The standard military round of the United States of America is 6.82, comma, you blithering idiots. So it's not a military round even anymore.
What would they say about muskets? There was actually a machine gun in the Revolutionary War.
Oh,
and there were carbine rifles. The German, whatchamacallit, they brought over 30,000 of them. King George hired from Germany, and they brought over a carbine, which was long enough for an infantryman and short enough for a mounted person. So these were deadly weapons. And yet, when we went to war, people were pulling cannons out of their own backyards and cannonballs and gunpowder and stuff because they had stored it. So, can you imagine today if I went out on Flag Day or July the 4th and loaded some gunpowder into my cannon and shot it off? They would have canaries. In my youth, we used to see Sherman tanks going all these, parades.
In the parades in the
you
late
don't see them
50s
anymore. When's the
60s?
last time you saw an M1 Abrams or something coming down the line? Well, you can't, because you're not allowed to have them anymore, and it's all ridiculous. It just is ridiculous, and it's based on ignorance on government's part and on our part. And since we're both doubly ignorant, it's allowed to pass. But people like Paxton and sometimes somebody down in Florida, will, they get up and they see the clock's right twice in the same day and they come up with something amazing and they push back, but there's not enough pushback. There's not enough pushback, and then they get attacked from their own side, let alone their enemies, political enemies. They get attacked by, fellow Republicans for doing this because that makes them uncomfortable or affects their fundraising or whatever is more important to them than making the law right.
Well, you made an interesting point, and that's that people don't realize. Well, the first machine gun has been around for a long time. It was the Maxim gun from 1884. So, evil machine guns. Well, go back to 1884, and that's when the first was actually issued.
Got me get you there. In the Revolutionary War, there was a 5-round machine gun, and you just pushed the bullets and you clicked the target as you were going. And so that was the actual first machine gun. I can't remember its name, but if you do a little due diligence, you'll find it.
Okay, people say I'm old enough to have been in the Civil War.
Right.
But when I was in the Civil War, I was never handed one of those guns, so I am personally not familiar with its use.
You and I got issued brown buses, so
that's true. That's true. You have to cut me open in the middle like a redwood to find out how many rings I have and how old I am. So that having been said, though, will there come a time, do you think, SCOTUS doesn't want to address stuff? To be honest, I'm a little bit shocked that they're going to take up those cases about firearms in October, but you're indicating that at this point, because of the nature of the acceptance of those cases, that it might be a little bit, and I don't want to jinx this stuff, but it might be a little bit of a given in terms of they are giving indicators that they may look more favorably upon it because of the acceptance.
Yeah, there hasn't been that much pushback on 2A issues as it is the last, 5-10 years. And I have to say, props to this Supreme Court. They have taken an enormous amount of cases that they have granted to come before them, where a lot of courts before them, remember the days back where you got 5 decisions out of a whole court in one session? These guys are ranking them out. I don't always agree with them, like they made an error in birthright citizenship, but because that's simply because I don't think they understand, again, what the framers and the founders and the courts all the way up to 89 or whatever it was, were trying to do. But on that matter, there are 3 terrible decisions, the 3 worst decisions in the courts in this country. One was before the Constitution was approved, and 2 have been since. Now, the first terrible decision that a court in this country made was brought about by a black man who went to court because he had an indentured servant who wouldn't work and kept running away. And he asked the court to rule him as property so he could get away with it. Both litigants were black. So our country basically legalized slavery because a black man wanted to be able to enslave a fellow black man. We are not taught that in any level of any school. You have to really go back and look this stuff up to figure it out. Of course, the next one was Dred Scott, and then the third was Roe v. Wade, which has just been terrible law, and should never have been applied, as you've been going on about universally in the country. That should have been an issue left to the states. Dred Scott was another ruling that black people, and under our present Constitution, that black people are property and can be treated as such. Terrible law. Again, by the Democrats, I might add. Then we had all the amendments that were passed right after Reagan got Reagan. Whew, there's a misspoke. Lincoln was assassinated, and the amendments under Lincoln were supposed to heal this country and fix it. That's not what ended up with Johnson becoming president. But oddly enough, all these amendments, and if you look at them, read them with this context in mind, BZ, they are trying to force Democrats to treat black people like human beings. That's it. That's all these amendments in a nutshell. The 14th Amendment, the right to vote and the right to be born and all, birthright and all that crap, was because Democrats were not acknowledging that black people born in this country could vote, that they were citizens, that they could have the rights of citizens. And so here we go, 14th Amendment, and it says that if you're born here, you get to be a citizen here. They did not mean anybody that can get over the border and have a baby on vacation. They meant the slaves post-Civil War were to be treated with respect and treated like citizens. That's it. That's as far as that law was ever meant to go. But of course, the Democrats flipped the switch, and some I can't remember their name, so I won't bring it up. But anyway, they flipped the switch, and then they come in here to protect everybody, like the Board of Education and all these other things that came out. And then they always quote these amendments, these post-Civil War amendments, as if they're protecting the black people in this country. Well, they actually are, but they're not really relevant anymore because, show me black people who don't get treated like citizens in this country. And yes, you might not be treated well, but that's being a citizen in this country. And you have a right to vote. Evidently, though, I might add, you heard Obama's new presidential palace is going to they're going to require a ID card.
Oh, yes.
State issue. Yeah,
that's true. So, that's correct.
Obviously, they don't want any black people to come in because we've all been taught that black people cannot get ID cards in order to vote.
Right. They're too ignorant to be able to do that. Well, if they're too ignorant to be able to get a card to be able to vote, then obviously they won't be entering the massive edifice that is Obama land that looks like a huge dumpster from waste management.
Okay, I thought it looked like a giant phalanx, but maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, or that too. Folks, we're going to have to take a break. Right below, if you're looking on portrait mode, that's Professor Michael Jones, or if you're looking on horizontal mode, landscape mode, that's Professor Michael Jones over there. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be talking specifically about the 14th Amendment, some history, because history, one of the first things that you should get from this show tonight is that history is incredibly important with regard to courts and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which is why they don't teach that anymore. If you had been listening in the first hour of the show, you would have heard Professor Michael Jones talk about that. Well, this is all purposeful. This is all intentional. Nothing, in my opinion, nothing that the leftists do is by mistake. And certainly nothing that Obama did was a mistake. That was all intentional. With that, let's take a break. Go hit the electric winkle chamber, whatever you need to do, and come back in just a few minutes, if you would, please, folks.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Listen in to the Reaver of Common Sense, where we cut through the noise of news and politics with a show equipped for bombast. Tune in Mondays and Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, and 6 p.m. Pacific, featuring a refreshing dose of reality. Jersey Joe fearlessly tackles the tough topics with no nonsense. Just pure common sense. Visit shrmedia.com, where you can hear the Reaver of Common Sense in action. He may not always be polite. He may not always be refined. But one thing's for sure. He always tells it like it is.
Are you looking for a way to boldly express your faith and love for your country? And check out Seven Armors, the premier apparel company for patriotic men of God where faith meets freedom in style. Our t-shirts are more than just clothing, they're statements. Bold, stylish, and meaningful. From timeless messages to modern designs, we've got something for every patriotic man of God. Wear your beliefs proudly with 7 Armors gear. Don't miss the chance to wear your faith and freedom on your sleeve. Visit 7armors.com today and join the movement. That's the number 7armors.com. 7armors.com. Faithful, vigilant, steadfast, fashion.
Are you looking for bold, honest conversation about the issues shaping America? Well, let me welcome you to Unleash 101 with Jeremy Hansen, where we take you beyond the headlines. We dive into politics and culture, the struggles of everyday life. It's raw, real, and unfiltered. If you're ready for truth with a punch, pull up a chair and join us. That's right, Unleashed 101, where real talk feels like home. Find us at unleashed101.com, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and more. We look forward to seeing you. Unleashed 101 with Jeremy Hansen.
Freedom. One nation in all of human history was built on that bedrock. Ours. A republic of the people, by the people, and for the people. Self-government requires freedom, just as freedom requires an individual willingness to self-govern. Freedom has made America exceptional. But it can only last as long as you and I seek the good, as expressed by the laws of nature and nature's God. It can only last if you and I choose to act as people of character. Forging character has been the pursuit of Hillsdale College since 1844.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome to the second hour, folks. Appreciate your being here tonight. It is 9:03 on the left coast, Pacific time. It's 11:03 Central, which is where Professor Michael Jones is. And it is midnight 03 on the far east coast right now. My very, very appreciativeness. Is that a phrase? For everybody who is here tonight. And the story is this. It's my constitutional professor, who's been on the show any number of times, Professor Michael Jones. And he is here tonight to try to explain the 14th Amendment, birthright citizenship. And I created this meme today. And I don't know. I think it was applicable for the show. I'll just let that sit right there just for a second so that you can get a good look at it, because I think that happens to be true. Now, Dr. Jones, back to the stage, and thanks for being here. What I want to do right now is toss up the 14th Amendment. And I'm just going to read the 14th Amendment. And then if I could, after reading it, I'd like to ask you a series of questions.
Sure.
That I think that you can really readily answer. So the 14th Amendment, ratified, I believe, in 1887, if I'm not mistaken. 14th Amendment addresses many aspects. In Section 1, and it's Amendment 14, Section 1, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. on its face, fairly simple. So people are having kittens when they're saying that, oh my God, finally the Supreme Court said the right thing. We hated the Supreme Court. Now we love the Supreme Court. But in the process of looking and doing a little bit of a background into the show tonight, I'm failing, and this is where I'm relying upon you. I'm failing to find a statute or a court decision granting citizenship to babies of foreign nationals or illegal invaders. I personally could not find such a thing. So did the bureaucracy kind of create this on its own?
Yeah, we gave all that to Bigfoot to hold for us.
And he did a terrible job.
Well, I guess he's done a great job because no one can find him and we can't get to it. But yeah, this is nonsense. Okay, look, I don't have the 14th before me, but John Bingham, Ohio, maybe? He's the one who was the key author for this amendment. Again, Ohio, Yankee, trying to force the Confederate leadership in the South to treat blacks like humans. Okay, now, let me tell you in one simple reason why all of this that was done today is nonsense. Read the line about jurisdiction. I think it's like the second line or third line in the 14th Amendment, if I recall.
So it says, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States.
Okay, right there. Let's put it in simple English. You will not treat black people unfairly. You will treat them like citizens. No state can take away their right to vote. No state can take their right of movement. No state can treat them as property. This is what the 14th Amendment said. Now, go to the sentence just before that.
Well, it says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof
right there.
are...
Right there. That's all you need to say.
Okay.
Or let's take something really nasty. Let's call them illegal aliens. People who come over the border from Canada or Mexico. I could care less if they swim from Cuba or come in from Russia through Alaska. I don't care. Is our Constitution applicable to these citizens of other nations?
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because in the process of looking into some background for the show, I found this. There's a guy named Senator Jacob Howard, and he's the co-writer of this, of the 14th. And he said, you know what, let me explain the 14th Amendment's citizenship clause. And he said, and this is from his speech in 1886, before he made it in 68. This will not, this is a quote, this will not, of course, include persons born in the United States who are foreigners, aliens, who belong to the families of ambassadors or foreign ministers accredited to the government of the United States. So for those of you who tuned in, who are just in chat now, he delineated quite specifically these four bullet points.
Exactly.
Foreigners, aliens, people who belong to families of ambassadors, and foreign ministers. It seems fairly clear to me about that.
Yeah. And so both of them, Bingham and Howard, if they were here today, they would be spinning in their graves. Well, wait a minute. They are in their graves, so there's probably spinning.
Yeah.
But they were concerned. If you go back and you look again, we can look at stare decisis, which is a bunch of Supreme Court decisions that are just bollocks. Or you can go back and look at these two gentlemen's idea of the 14th Amendment that they were crafting. You can look in the newspapers and see how was it debated, right? And how was the understanding of the country when they voted to pass the 14th Amendment. And I can guarantee you one of the debates was they were afraid that someone would come into this country. Now tell me if this is relevant today. They were afraid that someone would come in this country, have a baby, leave the country, teach the baby to hate this country, and then there was no laws we could do to stop them coming into this country because they're citizens. right? And now we got an American-hating citizen that's been trained overseas and hates us to come in and create mischief, and there's nothing we can do, nothing the FBI can do, nothing. And that was one of the things they were worried about. They were worried about non-citizens getting citizenship in this country that don't belong. If you're born on a military base somewhere overseas, you have U.S. citizenship. But that is not because of the Constitution. That is because of something called SOFA agreements, status of forces agreements. And each SOFA with every country that we're in, that has to be hammered out diplomatically and decided if it's a law or not. And then they have to decide if they're going to allow a dual citizenship or not, right? And that's a big deal. But in America, hell, you just got to get over the border and plop one out, and he's a citizen. And then we hear all the cries across the country of how we're splitting up families. Well, he's an American citizen. He's free to come and go. But his parents aren't, so send him back. And if they want to keep their baby, they don't have to be separated from it. They can just take their baby. If they want him to be an American citizen so bad, then they can leave him in, and we'll put him in some liberal orphanage and teach him how to hate this country the old-fashioned way.
Sure.
The school system, yeah.
Like Senator Kennedy said, you should be able to hate this country for free.
Right.
Instead of giving you all the rights and privileges. I was debating about this with leftists for the bulk of the day, and everyone was saying essentially, oh, there is no birth, like having kids with surrogates. There's no people coming here to do just like that. And hey, look, this is really strange. Here's an article, one of 3 that I found. And again, all my references will be in the Rumble side of BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show. The Chinese billionaires having dozens of U.S.-born babies via surrogate. And so you can read this article. It's for those of you who say, oh, it's not a thing. Well, it's a thing. And it's occurring with the rich. Imagine that. So theoretically, what could occur is you could have a baby, you could have a bunch of babies, bring them back in the U.S., according to this, take them back to communist China, raise them to hate this country, and then ship them back because, after all, they were citizens of the United States. And it's not impossible to say that sooner or later somebody couldn't become a politician of some import and then eventually, potentially, get up to the presidency. And as Ballstriker says, it was written to benefit former American slaves and their descendants. But unfortunately, it wasn't worded succinctly enough to demonstrate that effectively.
Well, the debate was, Bill, but it's gone into the edges, like the way I teach the Constitution versus the way it's taught. You will never know what the debates were for the 14th Amendment. And that's the only reason today you can say that it's not clear, or that maybe they meant this, or maybe they meant that. The only way you can do that is by not knowing how it was crafted.
Well, and the intent behind it at the time.
Right.
The Second Amendment was very clear. The First Amendment was very clear. And like I said, I looked all over the place, and all the way back to 1868, was the intent to say anybody can just come here and plop out a citizen. And I say, no, that wasn't. And he listed specifically, foreigners, etc. And the intent was always there, and that's the purpose of removing history. Then also, I happen to find this as well. Demorats would never, ever, ever say that birthright citizenship is bad, except Harry Reid, Demorat, 1993. Harry?
If making it easy to be an illegal alien isn't enough, how about offering a reward for being an illegal immigrant? No sane country would do that, right? Guess again. If you break our laws by entering this country without permission and give birth to a child, we reward that child with U.S. citizenship. and guarantee of full access to all public and social services this society provides. And that's a lot of services. Is it any wonder that 2/3 of the babies born at taxpayer expense at county-run hospitals in Los Angeles are born to illegal alien mothers?
True back in 1993. Well, things haven't gotten better. They've certainly gotten worse. And yet there is somebody indicating quite exactly that. Assimilation. Now, here's another example. Former Barcelona winger. You were talking about soccer a little bit earlier. A guy caused outrage after saying he's cheering for Morocco against the Netherlands at the World Cup. He was born and raised in the Netherlands, but he played for the Netherlands in the 2010 World Cup, but he has Moroccan parents. And to which I say, you know what, folks, just like Muzzies, assimilation is a myth. Oh, myth. And so the 16th was created for a very serious purpose. Let's see if I'm not mistaken. Clarence Thomas today wrote a 91-page dissent, which we will get to. And let's listen to what's going on in this here. This is, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is Will Kane today.
But Justice Clarence Thomas writing a 91-page dissent on why he thinks the court got it wrong. I am not sure that today's opinion will stand the test of time. The citizenship clause added greatly to the dignity and glory of American citizenship. Today's opinion devalues that citizenship. I respectfully dissent. Some on the left say that's not really what this is about.
There are folks who are doubling down on the idea that this country must be a white republic. Through a narrow decision, the Constitution held.
Okay, to which I say, says the black male racist.
Right.
Stands, but we need to still be mindful of the motivation that is driving.
Let's remind everybody, hey, what was the 14th Amendment a reaction to that Professor Michael Jones just said recently? It was a direct reflection and a reaction to Dred Scott.
All of this in the first place, it seems to me. And Kavanaugh is at the heart of it, just to answer that part of it.
There is motivation at the heart of this issue, but the motivation is revealed in the numbers. In 2023, 320,000 babies, that's 9% of all U.S. births, were born to mothers who were here illegally or on temporary visas. And that number grew during the Biden administration. The U.S. remains one of the few countries in the world that grants unrestricted birthright citizenship. Justice Alito, as you see on your screen, the number of countries that do not have unrestricted birthright citizenship, that scroll could take minutes, as it's virtually every other country in the world. Justice Alito wrote about the national security implications in his dissent. He wrote, suppose that a person's only connection to this country is that he was born here to a mother who was present just long enough to give birth and then quickly returned to a native country. Suppose that country is a strategic adversary or enemy of the United States. Suppose the child never visited the United States while growing up and was inculcated with hatred of this country. According to this court now, that person is a citizen of the United States. He has a...
Boy, Alito quoted me, huh?
and that's an opinion that came out of SCOTUS today. So it should come as no shock. Let me see if I can.
There's something important out of Thomas's rebuttal, and that is he is encouraging Congress to fix this with a statutory law, legislate it. It does not have to be a messy amendment to the Constitution, taking decades. This is something that could be fixed within a week if they would just get down and do it. And that requires, again, valor and honor of our legislatures. But they could fix this in a twink just by saying no to this, no to that, and getting rid of it.
Let me ask you this question then next. I went to Chris Ann Hall, and she is another constitutional scholar. And let me see if I can put this up right here. The words are going to be small, but I will.
I can't read them.
I know. I'm going to read them anyway. And again, this is from Chris Ann Hall, Liberty Addict. How SCOTUS should decide birthright citizenship. The Constitution delegates to Congress the authority to determine the uniform rules of naturalization. It is not proper for POTUS to determine terms via executive order. It is not proper for SCOTUS to define terms via court opinion. Congress needs to do their job. Well, I agree with that. Congress needs to do their job. The executive order, in my humble opinion, not being a constitutional scholar, I don't really even play one on TV, but that was certainly nothing of any remote permanence. So by her saying and writing, Congress, do your job, I understand how this got to SCOTUS. I understand the jurists saying that we got here, it's here, we have to analyze it. But did you do your job in the first place? And the answer is no, I don't think you necessarily did. So now Rand Paul, for example, is suggesting a constitutional convention to go back in and see if we can create a constitutional amendment to immure this so that it doesn't continue. And that's not the solution. I understand the EO thingy, but I still believe, particularly in light of history of the 14th Amendment, that they got it not just little wrong, but big wrong. And then I'm going to go to some opinions here in the not too distant future, the 3 dissents. But it is... Michael Jones, was this the proper way to go about this as an EO, or is that at best a stopgap?
The executive order is simply because Congress is not doing their job. Up until about the 1960s, Congress used to have parliamentarians and everything, and they had to decide if a law they were creating was constitutional before it ever made it to the president's desk. Nowadays, they just pass crap and they fling it up on the wall and see if the Constitution, POTUS, not POTUS, what am I thinking? SCOTUS knocks it down. If they don't, then it's the law of the land, no matter how bad the law is. And the Supreme Court can only look at so many cases. So the vast majority of laws, as I said earlier, are unconstitutional. But they don't care. They're doing this because this is what they want. Remember, what's her name from California, Speaker of the House?
Pelosi.
Yes. She was doing something, and I don't remember what the law is, but the quote would be there in the Netherlands to find. But they asked her, some enterprising journalist, which shocked me, said, under what constitutional authority are you using to pass this legislation? And her response was, are you kidding us? We can do whatever we want. That was her answer to her constitutional authority when it comes to passing legislation. Any damn thing they want. And only the Supreme Court can tell them they're doing wrong. And they can't, because that's not their function. They can only take cases that are brought before them. They can't look down and see a law's trash and say, we're going to fix this. That's not constitutional. So they have to wait for somebody to bring it up as a complaint. And there's a whole ordeal about certiorari and everything being granted on this stuff. So again, I understand Trump's use of the executive order because he's trying to combat this any way he can. Because the legislature won't do it. Even though it's Republican controlled, they still don't have enough spine to go in here and fix this kind of stuff. And if they did, then the executive order wouldn't be necessary. And ironically, neither would the constitutional amendment. We wouldn't need a constitutional amendment. We also wouldn't have needed SCOTUS looking at this to see what the 14th Amendment actually says. And so that's a waste of time and money and taxpayers' expense. And it's just one more way to cloud the water. And so, when you're looking in it, you can't see what you're looking at, so you just walk on. And that's what they are all doing. And only I think Thomas was the one who came in his dissent and said, fix this, Congress. It's in your authority. And he did it in such a way to be polite, but to tell them that this is sitting on their lap, not the Supreme Court's anymore, which I think is why we got such a wishy-washy result.
Here's 30 seconds of Captain in there. Liberals are a poison to America. Well, wait a minute. I think that happens to be true. Here's 30 seconds of Clarence Thomas. Go ahead.
Progressivism seeks to replace the basic premises of the Declaration of Independence, and hence our form of government. It holds that our rights and our dignities come not from God, but from government.
Right.
Stop right there. Stop right there. There's a video, and I should have had it up, ready to go, of Justice, the former Justice Ginsburg, Ruth Ginsburg, telling somebody from, I believe, Egypt, if I had to do it all over again, I would not recommend the U.S. Constitution to you. I would craft your own Constitution. And she said specifically because it limits government, and government needs to be unchained. And our rights, my big disagreement, of course, because it's true. My big disagreement is everybody thinks that rights come from government. They don't. Your rights come from God.
It requires of the people a subservience and weakness incompatible with a constitution premised on the transcendent origin of our rights.
Very true. Our rights come from God, not government. And that's why, for example, communists, socialists, all the various leftists and globalists are doing their very level best to make sure that they eliminate religion. Because communism and socialism will not tolerate any religion. That gets in the way. But our rights come from God, not from government. Those are facts in evidence. Unless you're just an atheist and you don't believe in this country anyway. And I always used to ask, then why are you here in the first place?
And where does good come from?
Yes. Oh, that's an imperative question right there.
It's also important, Bill, to know that not only does our rights come from God, which the founders were very big about, and the framers, but government cannot take away those rights. They might prevent us to access them, but we still have those rights no matter what they do.
Well, yeah, and God, there are all sorts of places that I could go right now. I think I'm going to start the break early by about 30 seconds or so, and then we'll have the final segment of the show. So kids, come right back, please.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
In a world where leftists are running out of metal for the safety pins of their soothing red diapers, one man stands alone, attempting to fundamentally change America, one leftist diaper at a time. BZ, your conservative Sherpa, is guiding you through the maelstrom of Democrat leftists and globalist lies, chaos, deceit, and betrayal. Listen to BZ Saloon on select and exclusive Tuesday and Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Central, and 11 p.m. Eastern on the SHR Media YouTube channel, Twitch, KLRN, Rumble, and X at BZ Saloon. It's one great late-night conservatarian talk radio show. Be there. Aloha.
Hello, friends. You have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior monarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name is Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRN Radio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at klrnradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRN Radio.
It's Sean from the Edge of Liberty. Just like the Bidens, I too am moving. Only in my case, it's days and times. That's right, you can now find the Edge of Liberty Monday at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern, and Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 Eastern on the SHR Media Network. Join me as we talk politics, news, alcohol, fun, not so much fun, clowns, small kittens, large kittens, dogs, amoebas, and anything else that just pops into my mind while I'm on the air. That is Monday and Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 on the East Coast, on YouTube, X, KLRN Radio, Facebook, Twitch, and anywhere else a good podcast is found. Please check out our website, shrmedia.com. I will see you live on the air.
Attention, all patriotic women of faith. Yep, I'm talking to you, sis. Are you looking for high quality, super soft apparel that reflects your love for country and your devotion to God? Look no further than Carry Girl Gear. Picture this. You rocking a tee so soft it's like being hugged by a cloud, all while showing off your love for God and country. Sounds dreamy, right? Well, welcome to reality, babes, because that's what we're all about here at Carry Girl Gear. We specialize in super soft tees, tanks, and more, designed specifically for the strong, patriotic woman who proudly wants to carry their message of faith and freedom. When you shop with us, you're not just getting a t-shirt. You're joining a community of like-minded women who are proud to wear their beliefs straight on their tees. So whether you're sipping sweet tea on the porch or leading the charge for faith and freedom, do it in a Carry Girl tee. Because life's too short for stiff, boring tees. CarryGirl.com, where faith and freedom meets fashion.
Independence. With that declaration, America was born. Inspired by a belief in the God-given rights of every human being, and in the good that comes from exercising these rights well. The founders of our great nation chose independence, as do we. Hillsdale College accepts no government funding because independence makes possible the good to which we aspire.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And it's the final half hour, folks. Thanks for being here tonight. I'm BZ. That is the underground professor right next to me, Professor Michael Jones. I appreciate all your numbers, all your comments. Come one, come all. I like it all. Leave your comments, if you will. I take advantage of them. It's wonderful. Su casa, mi casa is su casa. Your comments are all glorious. I'm sorry I don't have time to answer all of you or all of them. I want to play, if I could, Professor Michael Jones' 1 minute of Ketanji Brown Jackson, which to me illustrates clearly why she is the smartest jurist in SCOTUS. And then I'd like you to weigh in, and maybe if you have a comment or two after that, please, I'd like to have you opine about this.
I was thinking about this, and I think there are various sources that say this, that you obviously have permanent allegiance based on being born in whatever country you're from. That's what everybody recognizes. But you also have local allegiance when you...
Actually, she starts off with a lie, because we're basically one of about 2 or 3 countries that do that. Didn't we just say that? I could have sworn we just did.
Or on the soil of this other sovereign. And I was thinking, I, a U.S. citizen, am visiting Japan. And what it means is that, if I steal someone's wallet in Japan, the Japanese authorities can arrest me and prosecute me. It's allegiance, meaning can they control you as a matter of law? I can also rely on them if my wallet is stolen to, under Japanese law, go and prosecute the person who has stolen it.
Okay, make it make sense, but it's so stupid, I have to continue.
So there's this relationship based on, even though I'm a temporary traveler, I'm just on vacation in Japan, I'm still locally owing allegiance in that.
And so you have all the rights and privileges accorded by the Japanese, don't you?
Yeah, that's why they're closing all the mosques.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, that was very convoluted to get, and securitist to get what she wanted to be able to support the idea that you come under, if you come into our country, you are under our Constitution, right? But you see, that's not true. You're under statutory law. Sure. Is there a single country where you can go to and just break the law willy-nilly and you can't be touched? No. But you're not a citizen of that country, and you don't have the rights of the citizens of that country. You have the rights as a visitor of that country. You have the rights as a tourist. You even, some places, have to get visas to do that. But she had to do this to be able to justify the great lie that is what sanguine birthright's all about. It's blood, according to the founding fathers. If you are blood and you're born of blood in this country, then you're a citizen. And the problem was the Democrats were not treating black people like that because, oh, well, they came from Africa, so they don't fall under the Constitution. So that was their big get around back then. Now you see what the big get around is. But back then, that's what it was. And so Republicans had to smack the Democrats and say, no, you're going to treat black people like human beings. Now, you will not be taught this in school, but that is exactly what it is. And black people in this country, whether they were born in this country or brought over in a slave ship, were done under a legal status. Now, here's something cute. Dred v. Scott made them legal because they made them property. And so coming here as a slave meant that they were the property of the owner in this country, and therefore they fell under the Constitution, which was used heavily in the South against slaves. But, you know, when these things were passed, they were passed again, and this is no small point, to make Democrats treat black people like humans.
In other words, I speak leftist, so I'll translate. To force them to, because it would not have occurred naturally. Would it have, Professor Michael Jones? Of course not. It would not have occurred.
That is not found in nature. And to this day, Democrats have not changed. They just use different techniques to force the black people into a giant plantation called the Democrat Party.
Well, historically speaking, the Demorats have always been the racists, and the Demorats have always been the sexists.
Yes.
Let me throw this up here also. Matt Walsh from Matt Walsh blog said, you know what? In consideration, now that SCOTUS has opened the floodgates for foreign invaders to flock across our borders and spawn, the only choice we have is to triple down on immigration enforcement, militarize the border, mass deportations, round every illegal up. Don't pull back when the lesbian activists start screeching about it. Use whatever force is necessary. There is no other option at this point. And I would tend to agree with that. And I've said before, this is nothing shocking. It's not about the paint job. If you put Denmark on our southern border, if you put France or Norway on our southern border, and if they ass-fucked us like Mexico has ass-fucked us historically for decades and decades, it's not about the color. No, Joe, sorry, the only racists are yourself, and sexists are yourself and the Demorats. And
have
you
them look at Mexico's laws about visiting and being able to vote or buy property or any of that. They are more draconian than we are, and yet they sit there and cry foul when we won't take all the villains and criminals.
Well, yeah, by far. Again, I repeat, at the risk of being repetitive and redundant, because I must, leftists are listening. Let's look at history, kids, okay? The 14th was meant for freed slaves. Never any other application. The citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment ratified, like I said, in 1868, was to specifically overrule the Supreme Court's 1857 Dred Scott decision, which ruled that black people, free or enslaved, could never be U.S. citizens. I don't know, that seems pretty simple for me to understand, but apparently it's beyond human ken for you leftists. And let's see, if I'm not mistaken, was it not James Madison who said something similar to, if our nation is ever taken over, it's going to be taken over from within.
Right.
I believe that now, and I believed it yesterday, and I don't know, a few hundred days ago. Let's do this. Let's look at some dissents. Let me put this up. And by the way, the links to all these dissents. Hey, this is interesting. JS. For every 500,000 immigrants deported, 445,000 Americans lose their job due to decreased demand. So you think. Make that make sense. It doesn't. Anyway, these are dissents. They're really small words, which you guys are not going to be able to read, but I'm just putting them up so that you can see that they exist. And this was issued today. Justice Alito was dissenting. I'm going to read 3 dissents, and then I would like your comments, Professor Michael Jones. This is just from page 1. This is one of the most important decisions in the history of the court. And in my judgment, the court has made a serious mistake. As interpreted by the court today, the 14th Amendment confers citizenship on virtually everyone who happens to be born in this country, including the children of birth tourists, women who come here solely for the purposes of giving birth to a child and then promptly return home. Careful analysis of the text of the 14th Amendment and the process that led to its adoption shows that it does not degrade the concept of United States citizenship in this way. Instead, the 14th Amendment confers citizenship on only those children who at birth owe allegiance solely to this country. Any addendum that you'd like to pin to that, Professor Michael Jones?
I think I said that already.
You pretty much did.
But one of the things I like about Alito's dissent is he says the process of creating the 14th Amendment. Well, what is the process? That's what I've been saying. All the letters to editors and the debates in the newspapers and the constitutional debates, or the congressional debates rather, over the 14th Amendment. That didn't happen in a vacuum. The Democrats were very anti-14th Amendment. And so there were debates in the congressional record that you can go back and look up. Will people? Probably not. But they're there. And they will tell you what the debates are and the concerns and the thinkings of both sides to this issue. That is the process. That's what I taught in my classes about the Constitution and on my radio show, was procedural anomalies that we have overlooked.
Here's another dissent. This is the first of 91 pages of Clarence Thomas. And he says, this court's decision in Dred Scott versus Sanford would have permanently denied citizenship to blacks as a subordinate and inferior class. After the Civil War, the Reconstruction Congress overruled Dred Scott, first with the Civil Rights Act of 1866, then with the Citizenship Clause of the 14th Amendment, specifically the 14th Amendment. Both the Civil Rights Act and the Citizenship Clause guaranteed citizenship to persons born and domiciled in the U.S., regardless of their race. Neither guaranteed citizens or citizenship to persons who were not domiciled in the United States. And then his second paragraph sums up wonderfully. Blacks were entitled to citizenship because they were Americans. They had no other homeland, owed no allegiance to any foreign power, and were subject to no other authority. They fought and bled in the same battles gained and gloried in the same victories, and were liable to be called upon to defend America in time of war alongside every other citizen. The writings of Frederick Douglass, the Citizenship Clause, thus guaranteed them the dignity and glory of American citizenship so as to ensure that they would never be treated as second-class citizens under the law. And again, that's why history is so important.
You know, if they want citizenship, there are legal ways to go about it. They may not be good, and that means instead of getting rid of that process and just making everybody a citizen of this country, we need to go fix the process of people coming into this country claiming asylum and or want citizenship. But I knew he mentions the Buffalo Soldiers and the others, the blacks that did put on a uniform and defend their country in the Civil War. I knew many Mexicans who came into this country, legal or illegal, went down to a recruiting office and said, I want to be a Marine if you'll give me citizenship, and they sign them right up. There's almost nothing to do with that. You just become a Marine, or you go in the Air Force or whatever, and then you serve your time, you've earned a citizenship. And you risk going to war during that time, which, in the last 40 years, we've been at constant war, I think. So, that is a big risk, but none that we don't take as citizens of this country. And that's kind of what he's saying is, that, domicile means you live here, that you've got roots, that you buy a home, not that you come over the border, plop a baby out, and then take it back and get U.S. benefits and Social Security or whatever crap they can get, which is more, by the way, than me as a 90% disabled combat vet can get through the VA. And I've often thought about leaving this state of Texas and going over to Mexico and paying a couple grand to a coyote to come back and then claim all these benefits that they seem to get so easily. But anyway, yeah, that's my take on that. And they're absolutely right, both of them. And they're points that I've kind of hit along without expounding them as well or as eloquently as they can. But yeah.
All right, I'm going to make one final comparison here, and that's the dissent of Neil Gorsuch. And then after that, we'll be wrapping up the show. And Professor Michael Jones, I'll leave the last comments to yourself. This is another dissent, third dissent from Justice Gorsuch. At the heart of today's dispute lie two competing views of the 14th Amendment's Citizenship Clause. On one account, the clause incorporated the English common law rule of literally the right of the soil. That rule, developed in feudal times, had more to do with being a subject than a citizen. It was based on the notion that a man owed personal service to the lord of the soil, the same as his master owed it to the king, and it was born with the child and only ended in the grave. So, on the other account, the clause adopted a distinctly American settler's view of citizenship, one that promised the full dignity and glory of American citizenship to any child born in this country to parents who have made this nation their permanent home, regardless of their race, religion, or national origin. To my eye, the latter understanding better accords with the clause's original public meaning, and that leads me to join Justice Thomas's dissent.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They in England, where we left and then fought a revolution to get our own country, you were born to your land. You couldn't leave. You couldn't go visit without permission from the Lord. You owed your fealty to him, and you worked for him. And you got to keep a little, whatever he let you keep. And then he lived off of your labor. Does that sound familiar to the South and slavery? That they couldn't travel, they couldn't leave, they were bound to the land, they were bound to a master, they worked, and the master became rich off of their labor, and then they got whatever was left. So that's exactly the same thing, and this is why we had to come up with the 14th Amendment, which is no secret. There's no two ways to look at it. There's only one way, and that's the way it was written, the way it was debated, the way it was understood, and the way it was passed by this country. we, the people, passed the amendment. And that's from a certain particular set of knowledges that we had. And now it's been twisted and burned and turned to fit whatever, people want it to fit. And that's not just the left. I mean, the right has done that crap too, unfortunately. But I would love to see spine in Washington that would stand up and do these things that are actually their job to do instead of all the crap that they end up doing.
Let me end again with this. I'll go back to the first hour with regard to history. And I go along with Gorsuch and Alito and Thomas. Senator Jacob Howard, if I'm being repetitive, oh well. He explained the 14th Citizenship Clause. He made a speech, and this is a direct quote from that speech. This will not, of course, include persons born in the United States who are foreigners, aliens, who belong to the families of ambassadors or foreign ministers accredited to the government of the United States. I don't think he can be more succinct than that. So, Professor Michael Jones, thank you for being here tonight. Any final comments that you'd care to make about this, or hell, any other thing at this point?
Gosh, I don't know what to say. I've been talking too much already. But thanks for having me on. It's been a while since I've graced any of the airways. I'm old. Someone on, I don't remember who it was. I think it was Dan Butcher introduced me as the OG of podcasting. Because you and I and Ken and those guys, we were all SHR. We were all kind of the first until we got to know each other, but we were out there pioneering this stuff. I only wished I could have continued, but thanks for having me on. And I just dawned on me, we don't always have to do this live. If you want to do something and pre-record it, then I'm probably more able to do that in the future. But
well, I would do that if I had editing skill, which I have zero of.
Yeah, Agador was great at that, not me. Well, I can always do it live, but I just can't do it frequently. But,
okay, no problem. Then we'll have you back. There obviously will be more constitutional issues, and when they rear their ugly little heads, I'd love to have you back.
I'll end this by saying I can't believe I remembered most of that crap, especially with a concussion. So I have a severe concussion right now, and I'm kind of surprised all that stuff came up into the memories.
Well, then I say a hell of a job, sir. And again, thank you kindly, Professor Michael Jones.
Good night, everybody.
All righty, folks, take care. That's the end of the show. I'm BZ, and it's about the same time that I say something similar to... And so, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct right here on Rumble, the SHR Media YouTube channel, X, Twitch, and the munificently grandiose KLRN, Don't Tax the Rick, and tons of other bulbous podcast locales. Thanks to all the leftists who were in chat. You drove my numbers up tonight, so thank you. God bless you. Love you, baby. And also, it's time to say that promotional consideration, as per normal, is by the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, Shure and Electro Voice microphones, the Arrakis Company, the people who manufacture my mixer, and of course, by Pratt & Whitney Engines, manufacturing great engines whose thrust you can trust. Tiaras tonight are by My Little Pony. You may not have seen the whole thing. And there it is. And also, as per normal, thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team with whom I shall be consorting in less than 10 minutes. Thanks to everybody who was here tonight. Thanks to Professor Michael Jones. Everybody, God bless, take care, be safe. See you Thursday night.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Night, everybody.
Night, Mama. Night, Ben.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children. Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night,
Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, and good luck.